Former Environment Minister Steven Guilbeault says Canada is at a climate crossroads. In an op-ed in the Toronto Star, Guilbeault says Mark Carney and Daniel Smith are about to define Canada's climate future. Now, Guilbeault resigned from cabinet last fall after expressing concerns about Alberta's MOU with the federal government. And now he says there are key benchmarks in that agreement that must be met to make sure it's done properly. He's calling for industrial carbon pricing to be reinforced, not weakened. A final deal that maintains the federal government's clean electricity regulations and maintains methane regulations, and one that addresses water use in oil sands production. Joining me now is Steven Guilbeault, Quebec Liberal MP, and of course, former Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Steven Guilbeault, it's good to see you, sir. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, David.
You've laid out some pretty clear requirements there that you say, if they're met, it could propel Canada forward as a clean energy powerhouse. But given the way the talks have gone, missing some key deadlines, what is the likelihood that your bar for success is achieved in these talks?
I mean, as someone who has negotiated some of these agreements, I renegotiated industrial carbon pricing with Alberta, with Danielle Smith's government when I was Environment Minister. She would probably deny that, but it did happen. The fact that we've passed a deadline is not necessarily a sign that things are going badly or that they're going well. These are complicated issues, so I'm not surprised or worried by that.
Okay, but what if they fall short? Because I know you said when you resigned as cabinet on a matter of principle, because this was undoing a lot of the things you have pushed for in your time in public life, but you said you wanted to stay in the caucus to try to influence things. Yeah. If a final deal falls short of these standards, what does that say about your ability to influence this government and the direction it is choosing to go in?
So I resigned my position in cabinet because I was worried that we were willing to compromise on a number of our key climate and economic, because the fight against climate change has become the fight to attract dollars for the transition. 10 years ago, around the world, for $1 that was invested in the development of oil and gas, there was $1 that was invested in renewable energies and clean technologies. Today, that ratio is 2 to 1. $2 for renewables and clean tech versus $1 for oil and gas. And to use an analogy that the Prime Minister really enjoys, when you're playing on the ice, you have to skate to where the puck will be, not where it is. Where clearly, if we want to attract investors, if we want to have a robust and prosperous economy, the puck is going in the direction of renewable energy and clean technologies. So it's about climate change for sure, but it's also about other things as well. And I was worried that we were willing to compromise a lot of things in order to please Alberta. And I, as a cabinet minister, I could not stand by that.
Sure.
As a member of Parliament, even within the Liberal caucus, I can express views that are different than the government and position that are different. And I can say things like publishing this op-ed to say, well, done properly, this can have clear benefits for the people of Alberta and for Canadians across the Federation. But if done poorly, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot on many different levels.
Well, what is your sense of the balance, where that balance is right now? Because obviously there's a lot of political capital being spent on trying to satisfy Alberta's industrial demands. Tim Hodgson has talked about TMX as an example of how Canadian energy can come to our allies' assistance, and so could another pipeline to the BC coast. They've moved to help get Bay du Nord over the finish line in the Atlantic, in my home province of Newfoundland and Labrador. So how do you view where your party is now as you're sitting on the outside of cabinet watching these moves?
We're still clearly engaged in the fight against climate change. We still have massive federal support for the development of greener technologies, of renewable energy in ways that did not exist 10 years ago. But at the same time, I am worried that we are putting a lot of our eggs in the basket of fossil fuels. And again, I talked about the ratio of investments and what's happening globally. I could also talk about the fact that the International Energy Agency anticipates that the demand for oil will peak in the coming years. 3 years, is it 5 years? Why? Because 20% of vehicles sold in the world today are electric vehicles, because industries are moving away from fossil fuels to electric production because it's cheaper. It's more predictable. There's less fluctuation in terms of the price. Electricity tends to be regulated in most parts of the world, not everywhere, but oil is certainly not regulated. And as we've seen and as we've experienced over the past few weeks, subject to many fluctuations in terms of the price. So as all these things are happening, the demand for oil is going to, and it's not about production. It's really about the demand.
Right.
And once demand starts going down, then the price for oil is going to go down, because if we produce as much as we do today, but there's less demand for it, then the price is going to start coming down, which is going to have dramatic impacts for places like Newfoundland, like Alberta, and certainly Saskatchewan, if we don't anticipate those things and if we continue investing heavily in these sectors.
But in this acute short-term moment, right, there is this economic imperative caused by the United States to diversify markets, get more, domestic development, and as often happens in times like this, the longer, medium-term, short-term horizon goals on climate kind of get pushed aside. There's also a national unity component to this with the sentiment in Alberta. And we saw the Premier out today with the 9 referendum questions she wants to ask. A lot of them focus on immigration, but others broadly about Alberta being able to opt out or defy federal intrusion, to use the Premier's words there. So given that climate, can you see a path where Prime Minister Carney and Tim Hodgson can satisfy the development ambitions of Premier Smith and her government and ease your concerns, for example, of where they're going on the climate direction? Because it seems like a collision is imminent in some form.
Well, in terms of unity, we bought a pipeline in the hope of appeasing many in Alberta. It was a different government at the time. The Liberal Party lost all of its seats in Alberta and the prairies the following election. And clearly, buying a pipeline didn't help at all in terms of the separatist movement. I think there are things we should be doing regarding separatism. We know that there's clearly demonstrated outside interference by some agents in the United States on the separatist movement in Alberta. And perhaps elsewhere in the country. I think the conversation we should be having is, let's work together to ensure that Albertans, like all parts of the country, have a fair shot at this prosperous future. It is somewhat ironic that there is this narrative, certainly peddled by Premier Smith, that the federal government, and particularly the Liberal government, has been unfair to Albertans. If you look at the data from the Canadian Energy Regulator, for example, the oil production increased more rapidly under the Justin Trudeau Liberals than it did under the Stephen Harper government. So this idea that somehow Albertans were shortchanged by the Trudeau and the Liberals simply doesn't resist the fact-checking when you look at what's been happening. There are massive investment that were happening in Alberta in terms, at one point, Alberta was receiving 70% of all the renewable energy investment in Canada until Premier Smith basically put in place a moratorium. So let's have a real honest conversation about what's good for Albertans, how we can create prosperity there and everywhere across the Federation. And hopefully we can have to think that, we did something once and it didn't work, let's do it again, hoping that we'll end up in a different place with a different result, doesn't sound to me like it's the best strategy.
Okay, I want to ask you this as a final point, just your thoughts on, look, a lot has changed with the Liberal Party of Canada, with the leadership change and the new direction and the circumstances, your resignation. We talked many times when you were in Cabinet about the virtues of the carbon tax, that the rebate was a wealth transfer to needy Canadians. Now the Liberal talking point is that cancelling it is an affordability benefit to those same Canadians, right? And Marilyn Gladue is now a member of your caucus, and her social issues aside, her views on those things, she did support the convoy, for example, and you're the party of the Emergencies Act. Where do you think the Liberal Party of Canada is now as we approach the 1-year anniversary of the election? You have a majority, and there is a very obvious shift in the policy and focus of this government.
David, you'll never hear me say that cancelling the consumer carbon pricing was a good thing for affordability. That's for sure. Listen, I think the Liberal Party is larger than one person. I don't think that the party is veering to the right because of the arrival of MP Gladue. No more so than our party veered to the left when we welcomed someone who used to be with the NDP. I think that MP Gladue has been clear that she would support our positions on things like conversion therapy, the right of women to choose, and environmental and climate position, which we still have as a party, and we still have many measures to fight climate change, other than investment that we're doing through tax credits. For example, we still have an industrial price on pollution, and it's at the heart of the discussion with Alberta. Right. We still have clean fuel standards to ensure that that refineries do their fair share when it comes to reducing pollution. We still have targets for vehicles so that we reduce pollutions from the vehicle sector and the auto sector by 2035. So all of these things are still happening. My worry is that sorry to use that expression, but we put our foot off the gas pedal on climate, yet we are still feeling the impacts. Like thousands, if not tens of thousands of Canadians are displaced now almost every year because of forest fires, because of floodings, because of heat waves. It's not because we're not talking about climate change that we're not feeling the impacts in Canada and everywhere around the world.
I think in an electric car you can call it an accelerator. Maybe that's so that might be the word choice next time. It'll be more on brand.
Point, David. Yes, I'll keep that in mind.
All right. Steven Guilbeault, former Environment Minister, Liberal MP. We appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us, sir.